everyone. Welcome to the Webcast for Monday, June 16th. I'm South Ops meteorologist Jonathan O'Brien. The marine layer remains quite shallow this morning, though is a little deeper along the central coast, but the already limited low cloud cover will burn off quickly this morning with another mostly sunny day ahead. Water vapor satellite shows that a weak and fast-moving trough is about to move inland over central and northern California, while ridging remains dominant across SoCal. That trough passage today is going to reinforce the dry air mass that is already in place and also bring some breezier conditions to the region. Here's our 24-hour RH change for this morning. Overall, it's not too different than yesterday, but a little more in the way of drying trends, and keep in mind it's been quite dry to begin with in many areas, so that is not going to get any better today. Today's minimum humidity values will be about the driest we've seen lately. Upper single digits to mid-teens will be common away from the shallow marine influence, with widespread low to mid-single digits in the deserts. Poor recoveries are also likely in many areas tonight away from that continued shallow marine layer. The wind is a factor today as well. West to northwest winds of 20 to 30 miles per hour with gusts to 45 miles per hour and locally higher will surface across the mountain ridges and desert passes this afternoon through tonight. This will also include gusty north to northwest winds over the I-5 corridor, Santa Barbara County, and portions of the interior central coast. And after a very warm day yesterday, a little hotter than I expected, temperatures will cool just a couple of degrees today, but remain several degrees above normal, with valleys in the upper 80s to near 100, upper 70s and 80s in the lower mountains, and continued triple digits in the deserts. That is all to say that today is definitely an elevated fire weather day. That is also borne out by the hot, dry, windy index painting pretty sizable portions of the region that are likely to exceed the 90th percentile for today, with some decent probabilities of 95th percentile exceedance as well. And it's particularly this afternoon through overnight tonight that will be of most concern. Beyond today, there hasn't been much change in the forecast. As this weak trough departs, a weak ridge of high pressure will build back in and take us back to a similar pattern that we've been in, warm, dry, and locally breezy. But a bigger change is in store late this week as a deep trough pushes into the west coast Friday and through the upcoming weekend. Here's a look at Wednesday's forecast highs. You can see still quite warm, similar to what we've been dealing with, though still not quite excessively hot either. The dry conditions will continue, and winds will mainly follow typical local and terrain-driven patterns, but with some enhanced afternoon breeziness, especially by Wednesday and Thursday. The bigger changes come this weekend. Take a look at these refreshing forecast highs by Saturday. By this weekend, valley highs will be only in the 80s, with most areas seeing 10 to 15 degrees of cooling versus early this week. A much deeper marine layer can be expected with more extensive low cloud coverage. However, the interior, especially the deserts, will remain very dry, and that trough will bring a strong onshore wind push as well. Southwest to northwest winds of at least 25 to 35 miles per hour, with gusts to 55 miles per hour, will surface across the mountain ridges and through the desert passes Friday through the weekend. Dead fuel moistures continue to fall. They are now well below average in most areas away from the coast and approaching records for this time of year in the 100-hour time lag class. We'll see continued drying trends and more in the way of near-record territory in the next couple of days. ERCs have trended notably above average as well, and we are seeing conditions more in line with mid-July than mid-June in a lot of areas. We will probably get some relief by this weekend with the cooler weather, especially in the finer fuels, but we've got several very dry days to get through before we get there. So wrapping things up, due to the very dry and windier conditions, we have today as our highest probability day for the week for new large fire starts, approaching the top end of our elevated category. While today is the highest risk day, fire potential will remain elevated the next few days due to continued warm and very dry conditions. By the end of this week, the overall fire potential will likely decrease due to the cooler weather, but there will be dry and windy conditions across the interior and likely elevated fire weather, at least in the deserts. From a fire business perspective, recent activity has been concentrated in cured grassy fuels. This has limited activity from exceeding a single burn period, though we have seen some impressive single-day runs in the grasses on terrain-aligned starts, even in relatively benign wind conditions. Live fuel moistures generally remain in unreceptive territory, but are steadily drying, with some LFM readings, especially below 3,000 to 4,000 feet, suggesting that some species, like some chamise and sage, are approaching more flammable territory. We've had a couple interesting tests of our brush-dominant fuels. The Vista fire in Riverside County yesterday was one example of a fire that remained relatively small but probably would have behaved much more aggressively under higher severity fuel conditions, maybe an indicator that those fuels aren't quite there yet, so to speak. But while grass-dominated fire activity remains most likely, there is a low but increasing potential for fires to occur which do exceed single burn periods as brush and understory fuels become more receptive. Expect moderate initial attack activity to continue through Thursday, then a possible decrease late this week with the cooler weather. That's it for today's webcast. Thanks for joining us. The next one will be on Tuesday, June 17th.